Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Enjoy the Goldilocks Productions presentation of the In the Psychic Flow Show with Carolan Carey.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, this is your host, Carolan Carey. I am delighted to have you join us this evening at our new location. I wanted to go over a few of those on the Psychic Flow. We are at a new location, Goldilocks Productions. I just want to tell you a few of the places that you can check us out. Get Vocal, YouTube, Periscope, Spreaker, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Podcast Addict, and Apple Podcasts, and of course iHeartRadio and Spotify. Those are just a few of the places that you can listen to us. And our website is www.freeconferencecall.com/wall/Goldilocks Productions. Goldilocks with a Y. We are delighted to be here with you this evening. We have a wonderful and esteemed guest with us this evening, so I'm going to bring on in a moment Mr. Mark Anthony. I just wanted to let you know that we have an interview show tonight. Next week, we will have the incredible and delightful and zany psychic Joanne Leo, and we will be doing some mini readings for you. Be prepared with your birth name and your date of birth, and your birth name, not your married name, your maiden name or the name you were born with, and have that information ready and raring to go. And we'll be glad to help you with some readings next week. This week, however, we have the esteemed Mr. Mark Anthony, who is the psychic lawyer, an author, a paranormal investigator, and just all-around wonderful guy. He has a fabulous website that I'm going to point to you so you can check it out right now. It is www.evidenceofeternity.com. It says everything about Mark Anthony, grief management, all about him, frequently asked questions, his events, a blog, testimonials, all the shows that he's been on, some great videos. If you look in his media department here, is absolutely astounding. He is just incredible, and I have read both of his books, his latest books, and he has other books on different subjects. So we're going to bring Mr. Mark Anthony on, and we are delighted to have you, Mr. Mark Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing great, Carolan. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'd like to wish all the listeners a very happy holiday season.
Oh, thank you so much. We are really just so grateful that you are coming to Sarasota. So if you're in the Sarasota area, please check out Sarasota Center of Light. .com. On the event page, Mark will be with us December 13th and December 14th. The first event is December 13th, and that is the Mystical Magi. We're going to talk about that. It's a very interesting subject, a lecture that Mark has devised and created, and it's not a dry lecture. It's very exciting. And then the following evening, the 14th, Mark will be with us doing an evening of spirit communication. So those both events are probably going to sell out, so please check out the website. You can get your tickets online, or you can call me at 941-779-3971, and I will be glad to help book your seats, okay? Mark, we are so excited to have you visiting Sarasota. I can't tell you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I live in Florida, but I live on the East Coast. So if you draw a line straight across the state from Sarasota, you'll be in my neck of the woods. And what's funny about Florida, people tend to think everything about it's the same. The Tampa Bay, Sarasota area is very different than the Space Coast and Treasure Coast area that I come from. North Florida is completely different, the whole Jacksonville area. The Panhandle is a world unto itself. And then there's South Florida. And, of course, everyone's favorite oddball place and hilarious, fun place in the world, Key West. So Florida certainly is a very diverse and interesting state. And I can't wait to go to Sarasota. The Center of Light is just an amazingly uplifting and spiritual community. Everybody there, Carolan, has been so gracious, and I was so happy when they invited me to come and present the Mystical Magi, the Mystery of the Star of Bethlehem talk, which is part of my Ancient Mystery series, and then, of course, doing the Evening of Spirit Communication on Saturday, December 14th. So I'm really looking forward to this.
It's going to be a delightful time for us, too. What a great Christmas present to give someone. And let me remind our listeners and those who are planning to attend those events, both of Mark's books, Never Letting Go, will be on sale at those events. The other book is Evidence of Eternity. So both books will be on sale for that event, and book signings. Mark will be there signing his little heart out. We'll be glad to autograph your book. And so we're very excited about that. So please join us. That's a nice Christmas gift for someone, either buying a book or purchasing a seat to one of our events, or both. I'm very excited to meet you. I have been watching and reading. I've been watching every video that's available on your website. And I have to say, as a psychic medium myself, not of that kind of caliber that you're demonstrating, I've never seen such fabulous evidence. And evidence is so important to describe that loved one. Your evidence that you deliver in a gallery setting or one-on-one is just so touching and fabulous. I have to tell you, I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I appreciate that, Carolan. Coming from you, that's a tremendous compliment. Because
I know how hard it is, once you get that stream and it starts coming. But the things that you come out with, I'm just shocked. And the guests that you're reading are just like, wow, they're just stunned. And I just have never seen that kind of reaction. And I'll tell you what, you give me something to work for. I was delighted.
That. Well, I grew up in this environment because this psychic ability is a genetic trait that runs in my family. Both of my parents had these abilities, my mother and my father, and then I tracked it back at least 4 generations beyond them into the late 1890s. So it's really hard to see beyond that time, but I would assume, just based on how genetics works, that there are dominant traits and recessive traits. For example, like left-handedness is a recessive genetic trait, meaning that most people have a dominant genetic trait of being right-handed. And it's the same thing, like in my family, most people have dark hair and brown eyes, but there are, every couple generations, somebody with blue eyes. So when you have 2 parents with the same recessive trait, which my parents did, then the likelihood of one of their children having that trait increases, and that child happened to be me. And so from a very early age, I was able to discern spirits and pick up on vibrational information. And I was fortunate, Carolan, because my parents were very supportive, and they didn't suppress it. Because probably, it was difficult for you, I'm sure, when you were a child with your abilities. And it is for many of our colleagues, because family doesn't understand. You can get ostracized and criticized. My folks were like, Mark, just keep it with us. Just talk to us about it, because other people won't understand. When I was about 7 or 8, I saw that I understood then what they meant by that. And so this is an organic thing to me. And it comes with a lot of responsibility. And I thank God every single day for being able to help people cope with the loss of a loved one, because I'm able to facilitate communication between somebody here and a loved one in spirit.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad that you had the support. I think that makes such a difference from your family. You told a cute story in one of your videos about your parents at the diner with a spirit showing up.
No, that was hilarious. What had happened is my parents. I don't mean to laugh, because I remember this event. They went to. I won't name the diner, because I don't want anyone getting all bent out of shape. But they went for some breakfast, and they were sitting at a diner. And the interesting thing is that the diner was basically next door to a funeral home. And so Mom and Dad, the waitress came up and they ordered, I don't know, eggs and pancakes, whatever, breakfast food. So Mom's sitting there, and all of a sudden she gets that tingly sensation that we get running along her spine, and she looks up, and there is a person standing next to the table wearing a black and white checkered dress. And it's a woman, but she couldn't see the woman's face. It's like if you looked at her face, the way Mom described it, it was blurry. And Mom was like, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. She was like, there's a woman. And all of a sudden my dad goes, Jeannie? She goes, yeah. He goes, there's a woman standing at the table with no face. And Mom goes, you can see that? He goes, yes, I can see it. And he goes, why did you bring her here? And she goes, I didn't bring her here. He goes, well, you're always like delving into this and all that. And so they start getting in this big argument. She goes, well, how dare you? And they're like getting all, and all of a sudden the waitress walks up and walks right through this spirit. And the waitress shudders and goes, here's your food. Do you want anything else? And my parents look at the waitress, look at each other and shake their heads and go, no. And it's so funny because I saw them later that day. I was in my 20s. I was practicing law at the time, but it was on a weekend, and I saw them, and they were still arguing about, Dad's like, well, you need to stop bringing these spirits around, even though he could pick up on them. My dad's family was they were Baptist, and they were from Pennsylvania. In fact, I think I know my great-grandfather on his side was a Baptist minister in Pennsylvania. And so that side of the family, even though these abilities ran in it, they kind of kept it really quiet. Whereas my mom's family was of Italian descent, and the Italians looked at this as a gift from God and one that should be shared, and they were much more vocal about it. Mm-hmm. So it was funny when they would start arguing about psychic phenomenon and seeing spirits and stuff like that. So that's kind of the environment that I grew up in.
Wow, that is wonderful. So you are the offspring of two very talented individuals. So that helps explain a little bit in case people are saying, I can't do that, But the way you explain things and the way that you discuss and your own faith, which is amazing as well. You've discussed that. And I wonder if it's hard to keep the faith and to keep your belief in the afterlife, or does it help with your criminal defense work? Does it help cope?
At that time, I was practicing law full time, but right now, ever since, I'm trying to think. It wasn't long after Never Letting Go came out, which was in 2011, and I'm proud to say that Never Letting Go, I think, is like in its 11th printing, and it's still a spiritual bestseller all over the world. And then my
fabulous book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I wrote it to help people get through grief. When you're in that fog and that sense of devastation. And so now I'm concentrating solely on my work as a medium, as an author, and as a public speaker. So that's, for example, why I'm going to the Sarasota Center of Light as a paranormal expert for the Mystical Magi, and then, of course, to do the Spirit Communication event. But I do still appear on TV and radio as a legal analyst in high-profile cases. And it's funny because now whenever there's a case involving the law and the paranormal, the media, I've become the go-to guy on that, which I'm very, very thankful for. But certainly when I was practicing law, this is part of my skill set. People say, oh, does that give you an unfair advantage? And it's like, we all have gifts. And some people's gifts give them an advantage in certain contexts. But most certainly, Carolan, for example, and I explain this in the same book, Never Letting Go, it helps me in jury selection because with jury selection occurs before the trial starts. And in a prospective panel of jurors, let's say 20 or 30 people are brought in, and in smaller cases, misdemeanor cases, and most felonies in Florida, there's 6 people on a jury plus an alternate. When you get into the capital cases, that's where you get 12 jurors plus, maybe 2 or more alternates. But at any rate, initially the judge instructs they call the venire, the prospective jury panel, about their duties, and then the prosecution and then the defense get to ask the individual jurors questions, the objective of which is to find what biases, prejudices, predispositions people have, to eliminate those people so that we end up with a jury that's fair and balanced. At least that's what the objective is. And so after the prosecution went, it was my turn to ask questions of the prospective jury. And the case that I was handling, it was a battery case. Basically, my guy was a big bruiser, and he got in a fight with another big bruiser at a bar. And what had happened is the loser, which was the state's victim, if you will, was pressing charges. Okay, so when you get mutual combat and two big guys fighting, but it's still a crime of violence. So when I was selecting the jury, I kept getting this sensation from one of the jurors, this woman. And she had a Latina appearance, really attractive woman, and I kept getting cold chills and tingles, and I kept picking up on a female energy around her, and I'm like, oh, this isn't the time to be doing this, and I started getting this tense and tight sensation in my throat, and so I realized that the spirit must have had trouble breathing prior to passing, and it felt rather abrupt and violent. So I said to her, and this is a not unusual question in jury selection, in a criminal case, you want to know, I said, have you or has anyone in your family ever been the victim of a violent crime? And all of a sudden, the woman, the tears start to flow, she begins to tremble, and she looks up at me and she said, a year ago, my sister was in a foreign country when an escaped mental patient strangled her, brutally murdered her, dismembered her body, and threw in the garbage like she was trash. And I'm standing there going like, oh, my God, they didn't teach me in law school how to deal with this one. And now I'm really picking up on her sister's coming through, and everyone's staring at me, and I can hear my client going, dude, what are you doing? And if people want to find out what happens, they are going to have to read my book, Never Letting Go.
That is in there. That is in Never Letting Go, I believe.
Yes, that was in Never Letting Go. But the reason I bring that one up, it was such, because people are like, well, do you use your ability in court? You got to realize psychic ability, we're all psychic to varying extents. In other words, we can all swim. Some people may just dog paddle. Some people may be good at doing, the breaststroke, and then you get your Michael Phelps who can, win tons of gold medals because of that. And just because we can all swim doesn't mean we're all going to be a Michael Phelps. Okay, so we all have intuitive abilities, and whether or not you're paying attention to them is up to you. And so it's not like I'm walking around like constantly picking up spirits, because I got to do things around the house. I got to work on personal issues and problems and things, and take my car and get gas and serve. You know what I mean? So I do have a life. Also, I have found, Carolan, that with mediums, with psychics, we need to learn to turn it on and turn it off.
Correct,
because
yes.
If we don't, it denigrates the quality of the contact and the interface with the other side. So a lot of people are always asking, wherever you go, our spirit's always there. Well, spirits are always there, but sometimes, I'm paying attention to them, and other times I'm not, simply because, I have to get things done in my life.
Yes, you had mentioned, I believe in one of your TV interviews, that it's not hocus pocus. It is a sensitivity to a frequency known as the other side. And this is balanced with science, physiology, theology, and evidence. Can you speak to that? Can you explain a little bit to our listeners?
Oh, absolutely. And that's an excellent question, Carolan. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that this is some kind of trick. Okay, that, I'm cold reading people. And it's funny because I was on a TV show last month in Houston, and I was doing a reading for the audience members. It was a morning talk show, Great Day Houston. And I was drawn to this one woman, and her father came through, and all of a sudden I started going, Methodist. And she goes, well, we're Methodist, okay. And I looked at the camera and I go, okay, for all you cold reading people, I looked at her and she looked like a Methodist. I mean, you know, and then other things started coming through, like how he died and very specific pieces of evidence he was transmitting to me. And then all of a sudden I go, I'm getting a Macintosh Apple. And she goes, well, I like apples, but I go, wait a second, what type of computer do you use? She goes, oh, my God, a Mac. So I looked at the camera and go, okay, she looks like a Methodist who has a Mac, okay? You know, so the thing is, it's not a trick for a legitimate medium. What it is, within the brain, there is a gland known as the pineal gland, and it's about 4 inches behind the center of the forehead. And for those people who do yoga, that's and understand the chakras, that's what's known as the third eye chakra. And the pineal gland regulates our brainwave frequency. It also regulates our perception of light, both in the physical and I believe in the spiritual sense. And it also, according to a study conducted by a British and German study, and then there was a French-Israeli study, it was found that the pineal gland has both magnetite and calcite crystals in it. Well, I recently was at a museum and I saw an original crystal radio. It was really cool. It's from like 1910, something like that.
Wow.
And, you know, that was a piece of quartz crystal with a copper wire running low levels of electricity through it. Well, in our head, we have the same type of thing, albeit much more sophisticated. So the other side is another frequency. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. We know this from the laws of physics. So our vibration is lower and slower, henceforth we're in corporeal, material world form. You open up your brain to higher frequencies, you start tuning in. Let me make it simple. We live in AM radio, okay? Let's call what we're doing right now, Carolan, you, me, the floor that we're, sitting or standing upon, the table and desk and all that. This is all AM radio. And the other side is FM radio. Both systems rely on energy, vibration, frequency, and amplitude, but they're moving at different frequencies. But they can overlap. And so when a psychic psychic medium tunes into the other side, he or she is raising their frequency, increasing their frequency out of AM and bringing it almost up to FM. Spirits see that, they bring their frequency down from FM, and you get a frequency match. And so this is based on quantum physics, it's based on science, and it's based on the fact that this is real. I could go on and on and on about this because these are the type of things I like to write about in my book, but people need to understand that these abilities have been documented since the dawn of human history, and there have been very talented psychics and mediums throughout history that just had amazing accuracy. And now, with our understanding of quantum mechanics, now we're beginning to see how it works, because everything is energy, once you start tuning into these higher frequencies, higher vibrations, you're able to connect with spirits to this other dimension and begin to receive discernible information from it.
So beautifully explained. Thank you so much. That is very, very helpful. I wanted to ask you as well, it's called Rock and Roll Heaven, I think is my favorite video of you working. And I forget where that was. Was that in Edgar Cayce in New York?
Actually, that one was in Florida at a place called Aquarian Dreams. And the funny thing is, tomorrow night at Aquarian Dreams, I'm doing the Mystical Magi presentation, and then Saturday night, an evening of spirit communication. And the reason I'm bringing that up is it's far enough away from Sarasota Center of Light, so they're not competing events. And what had happened was my manager, she started insisting that we started filming my events. So she got a film crew, and they had a 3-camera shoot, and it was set up, and I started doing this. And I was drawn to a woman, and what was really great, what people need to understand in a reading is there's 3 parties. There's the medium, there is the client, and then there's the spirits. So think of like a triangle, okay, and the spirits are at the top, okay. But each of the 3 components, the medium, the client, and the spirits, or the other side, are equally important. And so when you have somebody who thinks really and connects the dots and puts things together and doesn't argue or overanalyze things, meaning the client, things are going to go a lot more smoothly. And Rock and Roll Heaven, the client was just wonderful because her husband, not ex-husband, her husband who was deceased, came through and started transmitting a lot of music that he liked, songs and specific information, and she recognized everything and got it right away. And it was just really, really nice. And you know, this happens quite a bit. We just happened to be able to catch it that night on film. But in several of the videos, yeah, we have that as well. And it was really sweet because what's so nice about that video or that reading is you can see the healing and the emotion happening with her. And what's funny is recently I ran into somebody who said, "Oh yeah, I saw on your YouTube channel." If you go to my website, there's a media room, but that can also link you to my YouTube channel.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, the lady, I'll just call her, Janet. It's not her name, but Janet." She goes, "Yeah, she's a friend of mine." She goes, "She is." She goes, "Yeah, she wasn't even supposed to go that night. That was like a last-minute thing.
God.
She didn't know why she decided to go." And so spirits have a way of kind of pushing us in the right direction sometimes.
They absolutely do. These videos are on Mark's website, evidenceofeternity.com. Please check them out. That one in particular I really enjoyed watching, not just out of curiosity to see how you work, but, of course, that's one thing. But I was so impressed, Mark, because the evidence was overwhelming. When you started singing, I just called to say I love you. I thought I was going to start crying. I mean, watching the reaction that this gal had that, oh, my God, he left that on my voicemail. He had moved away, and we weren't really speaking. I wasn't taking his calls, and I get home, and he had sang into the phone, into the machine, "I just called to say I love you," and you got that? You picked that up? I mean, to me, that is outstanding, Mark. I mean, I was just so floored, I have to tell you. It's just a really great moment. And I was like, wow, this guy is dynamite. I was just so impressed. Well, I really was.
It's funny because some of the things that come up sometimes, and I've been doing this long enough to where I know that the weirder it is, the better it is. Or usually the more accurate. And I was doing a reading for this one woman, and her husband had passed, and he came through. And, so I'm getting stuff, and she was, "Oh, okay, that's good. And all of a sudden I start seeing an octopus. And I'm like, "Octopus?" And she goes, "Oh, my gosh." And I'm like, "All right." She said, "Well, we used to live in Belize, and we lived on a canal, and every morning we'd come out with our coffee, and we used to catch lobsters, and we put them in this tank, which was like, right overlooking the canal. And one morning we came out, and an octopus had climbed up out of the canal and was grabbing one of our lobsters." And she goes, "Do you think that's what he's talking about?" And I said, "Well, unless you have another octopus story," I'm kind of thinking, yeah. And then we both started laughing because it's like, look, everybody's got a puppy story or a kitty story, but how many people have an octopus story? And so it was hilarious. I mean, and she and I, we had such a good laugh over that. And so it's always nice when you get people who will recognize these things. And what I tell folks, Carolan, is when you're doing a reading with a medium or a psychic, don't overthink it or hyperanalyze the information the second it comes in, because there's what I call the no syndrome. It's like people that get into shooting everything down. No, because you may not recognize it right away, but after the reading, and I get emails every single day from people who, after the reading, what started making sense later on. okay, because it starts to unfold and they start to put it together. The other problem people have is they hyperanalyze and overthink things when they're coming through. I was doing a session for a couple college professors, a husband and wife recently, and their son who'd been killed in a car accident came through, and he starts talking about refrigerator. No. I go, well, hold on. I don't fling out random kitchen appliances hoping to get a hit, okay? He's really focusing on refrigerator. Oh, well, last week we got a new refrigerator. It was dented and it's scratched when it arrived. We sent it back, and it's been a big problem ever since. I said, well, then the answer is yes. No, it isn't. Why would you bring up a refrigerator? A refrigerator doesn't make any sense to me. We're trying to understand what the significant... Okay, do you see the problem there?
Yeah.
They were so busy finding a reason to say no and argue with me. And what's happening is when spirits are coming in, they're trying to build a rapport with me, so they may initially bring up things that the client may think is not all that big of a deal. Look, I don't know these folks got a new refrigerator, but I'm seeing refrigerators and talk about refrigerators. So what I tell people is, if I bring something up and it makes sense to you, you just got a new refrigerator, the answer is yes, not an argument. Get the information down, then after the reading, then you can sit there and start picking it apart, and you'll find that one image or one message actually has many levels of significance.
Correct. That's understandable. And it's enlightening for those people who may not get a reading from you in a gallery situation, but they are listening. So that message is profound really for everyone.
It is because, and this is something I'll be demonstrating on Saturday, December 14th at the Sarasota Center of Light, is that even if somebody doesn't get an individualized reading, okay, let's say I'm doing a reading on Jane and Bob in the audience doesn't get a reading, but the things coming through for Jane begin to resonate with Bob, and he starts relating to that. That's the nature of spirit communication. It isn't necessarily an individualized thing. Okay, so basically spirits come in a group, and the person talking through me to Jane is actually like the lead singer of this chorus, okay, from the other side. And the spirits in that chorus know that Bob's there, and they may be given a message to Jane, but one of Bob's or more of Bob's spirits are also giving similar messages which are resonating with him. And I'll explain this in greater detail at Sarasota Center of Light.
Right.
But people need to understand that when you go to a group mediumship event, don't sit there and just think me. If you start hearing things that begin to resonate, touch your heartstrings, bring a tear to your eye, or even bring a laughter to you, this is all part of the healing process, and this is what spirit communication is all about. So we have to start thinking globally with, when I say globally, when you're in that environment, even though you may not be the one getting the reading, if it's resonating with you, take the healing message.
Absolutely. That is such a good point. You also talk about grief management. While we're talking about that, you had mentioned in one of your videos about people dealing with the first anniversary, the first birthday without the loved one, the first holiday, and you mentioned some very valid affirmation to me. Today is not that day. Can you explain to our listeners a little bit by what you meant by that?
Absolutely, because this time of year, more than any time of the year, is very important for this. We're coming up on the holidays. Whether, you celebrate Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, I believe the Buddhists have Bodhi, B-O-D-H-I, around this time. I don't know if Ramadan is around now. But the thing is, we all have celebrations of light, and many of them fall within this time of year. But, we'll go with Christmas and Hanukkah. And let's say that you've lost a loved one this year, and now there's that empty chair at the table. okay? And then there's the memories of what Christmas used to be like. And then there's the clothes still hanging in the closet that will never be worn by that person again. And even though maybe if it isn't, the loss didn't occur this year, maybe it occurred 5 years ago, but there are events like the anniversary of the person's death, that person's birthday, Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, whatever, Thanksgiving. And what happens is certain events, certain things, certain songs, smells, tastes can immediately trigger that response where it brings you right back emotionally to the day and the time that that loved one died. That horror, that depression, that sadness, that caving in feeling. And this is very normal. And for people who are experiencing this, don't think that if that happens to you that you're somehow weak or that this is wrong. This is a very normal thing, but it hurts because psychologically now you're back at that day. So one of the affirmations that I teach and one of the blogs that I've written is called Today is Not That Day. And when you start getting overwhelmed, let's say you come up on the birthday of a loved one who died, or even more so, the anniversary of that person's death, and now you're spiraling back in time to that pain and that agony, you've got to tell yourself today is not that day. That day was a different time. This Christmas is not the day that that person died. This Hanukkah celebration is not the day that that person died. And I know that this sounds simplistic, but it really isn't. And it helps when people start to realize that that was another time, another day, and even though the numbers on the calendar may be the same, this isn't that year, that day, that time. And what will happen is it starts to dissipate that wave of grief, so it's not so intense and it doesn't hurt as much. So today is not that day is an affirmation that you tell yourself to help ward off the crushing effects of grief.
Right. Well said. Very well said, and I appreciate that. Thank you. That's beautiful, the way that you put that, and reminding that it's almost like it will never get that bad again as that day. Each day is a step forward, and sometimes we take a step back, and it could be years, and it still hits you behind the knees, but it is not as bad as that day that it happened. I think that kind of helps.
Yes, because think of the waves of grief. Like right after a loved one dies, you get hit like, I live by the ocean. So like in waves, once again, it's frequency, but we call them sets, okay, for people who surf. Sets are a whole group of waves that come in a rapid order, and then there may be a lull in activity, and then another group of sets will come through. It's the same thing with grief. Okay, you'll get hit by a set of waves, grief, 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 pound, pound, pound. And initially, let's say the first year after the person's death, those sets are so frequent. And then over time, the gap between the sets of waves of grief begins to get greater, and the intensity of the waves of grief begin to lessen. It never really goes away. This is just how we're designed to cope with these things. But then there's triggers that will bring you right back to the full power and intensity of that tidal wave of grief. And so today is not that day is a technique to counter the intensity of the wave and frequency of the waves of grief. It's not easy. I wish that there were the magic wand, whether it was a reading or something I could say or you could say, or a piece of chocolate that you could eat that will make the grief go away. But what people need to understand is that grief is part of life, and we are designed as beings to cope with this, and it's not easy. And that you don't get over grief. It is a process that we go through. And that process can take a lifetime. And you can either cave in under the crushing effects of grief and turn to alcohol, drugs, anger, violence, acting out behaviors, or you can use that pain as a motivation to become more spiritual, more educated about the afterlife, more compassionate, to begin to do good works. So that's the choice that you have. And it's very important for us to realize that when bad things happen to us, that is the lesson or the opportunity for us to begin a new spiritual path in our life. And let's face it, Carolan, we grow in response to adversity and difficulty, because when everything's just wonderful and everything's just happy and perfect, why do we have any motivation to change, to grow, or to evolve?
That is, thank you for addressing that with our listeners and with myself. That was beautifully put. Thank you so much. I just wanted to interject here. Tiffany is, my producer's telling me, great show. I am chatting with the listeners in the chat room, and they are loving Mark. They just love Mark, so I wanted to share that. Thank you so much for everything that you're talking about. They love you. Let's talk a little bit about your presentations that you're going to be doing on both sides. Talk about the mystical magi for a moment, about your talk about that, because you were very excited the last time we spoke about the astrological aspect, the Star of Bethlehem. Can you speak to that, give a little promo about that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's funny because I just sent out a newsletter and I said, every great adventure has sinister villains like Herod the Great, epic battles like the Romans versus the Persians,
right?
Selfless heroes like Joseph, and, of course, ancient mysteries. Dun, dun, dun. and the thing is, I've always been fascinated with ancient history and ancient mysteries. And even though I'm known as the psychic lawyer, it's funny because I've also been branded as the psychic explorer. And this one media outlet called me the psychic Indiana Jones, which to me is like the greatest compliment on planet Earth. I mean, it's like, thank you for the reporter that said that. Because what it is, I've always spent time visiting mystical and spiritual sites around the world. Since I've been a child, I've had an interest in theology, philosophy, history, of course, quantum physics, and spirituality. And so I'm invited to speak at a number of expos, like the International Association of Near-Death Studies, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, the Vail Symposium. I've spoken at Harvard, Brown, Columbia, and Yale. I've spoken at the Edgar Cayce Center for the for the Association for Research and Enlightenment, just to name a few. And I have different topics. I talk about reincarnation and the afterlife based on quantum physics. But I also do an ancient mystery series. And the mystical magi, the mystery of the Star of Bethlehem. See, we look at the Christmas cards and, we see like this giant star with a spotlight beaming on a manger and, of course, the three guys on the camels heading towards it. That's not what happened. The Star of Bethlehem, based on my research, and I've been researching this for years, was a very real thing, but it wasn't the popular Christmas card version, because if it had been, Herod the Great, who, as we know from the Bible, had all the children that murdered, so that, in other words, when the wise men came to him and said, where's the king of the Jews that is born? And Herod wants to know, well, where is he, and go find him. And, if it had been a spotlight on a manger, Herod would not have tried to have gotten the wise men to inform him on that. And I don't want to give away the substance of the talk, but I'm going to take the audience on a journey through time from the time of ancient Babylon through ancient Egypt, all the way up into the Roman era, with Herod the Great and get into who the Magi were. Who were these people? Why did they know these things? How are they able to spot unusual astrological phenomenon? And then tie it into what happened. And it's been just an incredibly fun presentation for me to put together, because, there's a lot of people who question faith. And my purpose is not to get up and say, this is what happened, you have to believe this. Because my whole life I've had people try to shove down my throat, there's one and only way to get to God. And of course it's their particular way. And then someone from another religion or another branch of Christianity comes up and says, oh no, it's my way. I'm going to present the evidence. And I'm even going to present what the skeptics say. But let me tell you something. It is fascinating when you start looking at the whole picture, and it has been just a lot of fun to put this together. This is a family-friendly presentation. And so even for people who don't necessarily want to come to the Saturday night event with the spirit communication, but let's say, the family, you got some kids that are interested about the Star of Bethlehem and the mystical significance of the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and going deeper into the whole birth of Christ and the following of the star, and then, of course, the political situation going on between Herod and the Romans and then the Persians. I want people to have fun. I want them to think, and there's quite a few surprises along the way too.
Oh, that is fabulous. I am so grateful to be able to attend that and to gain from your experience, your astrologically and as a paranormal investigator and your education at Oxford and your theology. It just brings up, we all benefit from your experience, and it sounds very, very exciting, a great family night, and we're really looking forward to that. I know everyone would probably be astounded, want to do the evening of communication, but the Mystical Magi is really for everyone, every age, and it's going to be so educational and fun and exciting, and I really personally cannot wait. And I hope that I encourage everyone to buy their tickets for the Sarasota Center of Light. If you have not already, please do that. Get on there, jump on there, and purchase your tickets for those events. And books will be available, both books, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. Mark will be signing books that night. Great Christmas presents. Two very well-written books, and I've read a lot of books written by mediums through the years, Lilydale mediums, several that I had the opportunity to watch and to meet. And I have to say, your two books are absolutely fabulous. Now, I know you had mentioned on your website one of them was mentioned for a Nobel Peace Prize, wasn't it? Or a Nobel
Pulitzer.
Publishing.
Pulitzer. Yeah,
Pulitzer.
Well, yes, that was Evidence of Eternity. That was my second book. My first book, Never Letting Go, it's a guide on the journey through grief, and it's inspirational in that it brings through messages from the other side. It teaches people how to recognize messages in spirit from spirits, and it has a very large healing component. And then when I was on the Never Letting Go tour, people started asking me questions about reincarnation, what happens to people who die by suicide.
Right.
Do animals have souls? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Does God exist? Is there any scientific basis for this? So I started keeping a list of what people were asking, and that gave me the outline, if you will, for Evidence of Eternity. And so when Evidence of Eternity came out, I mean, it hit like number one on the bestseller list on several different categories. And then all of a sudden I get this email. And I open the email, and it's from Columbia University, Office of the Pulitzer. And I'm thinking, all right, now who's pulling my leg here? Because, a lot of my friends are they're professors and they're NASA scientists. So I'm thinking, okay, somebody's, but I'm looking at it, and I go, this looks pretty darn official. So I called the number on it, okay? And somebody answers the phone and go, Columbia University, officer of the Pulitzer. I'm like, really? So I started talking to them, and somebody had submitted my book for a Pulitzer Prize in nonfiction. And from what I understand, it is the first book of that genre, the metaphysical genre, that actually had been considered for a Pulitzer. And
it's amazing.
What an honor. I mean, I was just flabbergasted, really.
Oh, I'm sorry I tangled that up. I was trying to spit those words out. But, I mean, to me, that has to be a great honor, because the way your books are written, the way you speak, how you explain things, are just perfect and really, really fabulous for our listeners and for myself. I am so happy for you for that. You certainly deserve that award. Your writing is great, and I love the way that you talk about the crime, the homicides, the suicides, answering all those questions that so many of us get as mediums. Are my loved ones okay? What do you feel is the most important reason, or the most significant reason, that our loved ones come to a medium in spirit or come to us in spirit? Is it to reassure us that they are okay, or is it to give us hope? What's your take on that?
I don't know if there's any one specific reason, but I think you brought up a couple very important ones. Number one, well, let's start with the biggie, love. They love us, okay? Not even death can kill love. And the thing is, because we're energetically interconnected, they pick up on when we're grieving and when we're sad, so they reach out to let us know that they didn't disintegrate into nothingness. Because in survival of consciousness studies, what we've seen is that even though the body may die, the spirit, the energy, the quantum consciousness, the quantum electromagnetic field within the brain lives on after physical death, and it stays coherent. And the thing about pure energy, once spirits become pure energy, they don't get old, they don't get sick, they don't die. So they're all excited, and they see us and feel us grieving, and they want to comfort us. They want to let us know that they are with us, or can be with us when they choose to, and that life is eternal. So that's part of the complexity why they come through, and they will communicate. They will communicate. Dreams appear to be one of the most popular forms of their communication. And it was funny, Caroline, and I'm sure you've seen this too. If people come to you and me, and they believe what we do, and they're on board, but other people say, oh, you can't do that, you're crazy, you're nuts, you're making it up. Or if somebody says, I saw my son's spirit standing in the living room for a second, or I felt his presence around me, people tend to discount that. But in the dream state, they don't. People say, I had a dream, and my Aunt Martha came to me, and my God, it seemed so real. I know that it was her. And this gets into the brainwave frequency that I was discussing earlier, because when we go to sleep, we go from the beta state, which is the awake conscious state, into the alpha state, brainwave frequency, and then we go to the theta state, and on the alpha-theta border, brainwave frequency becomes very conducive for psychic activity. This is when it occurs. Spirits are aware of that, they see this, and they will adjust their frequency to align with the alpha-theta border, and that's why people have visitations in the sleep state. And you can tell the difference between a dream and a visitation because of the sense of reality of the contact. It feels so genuine, so real, and it's not the surrealistic, cartoonish, absurd things that happen in dreams. This is a real conversation, and spirits do this. This is going back thousands of years. In the Bible, how many times in the Bible does an angel come to somebody in a dream, or God talks to somebody in a dream? And it's not just in the Judeo-Christian tradition, but it's in all the religions throughout the world. So these accounts have been documented since the dawn of recorded history, and that's why it's so important to realize that just because somebody we love has died doesn't mean that we're not going to hear from them. Now, if you choose to cloud your mind with negativity and rejection and skepticism, that's a personal choice. But then again, doubt is part of one's spiritual journey. But if you just got to work through the doubt and get to the point where you realize that there's a lot more to existence than our 5 physical senses.
That is wonderfully put, because I'm sure a lot of people are asking that. They will ask me, or you'll hear people ask, how do I know that that was real? So that was a beautiful explanation between a dream and a visit. Well, very well put. A lot of people ask that. They question themselves, and I think maybe people have to learn how to trust their own ability. And you probably talk about this on Evidence of Eternity. You teach as well. You teach classes.
I don't teach mediumship classes or psychic development. When I say that I teach, it's more in my lecture series, because a number of my lectures focus on the practical and the physical aspects, or the scientific aspects of spirit communication. A lot of people want me to teach mediumship, and the thing is, Carolan, I'm of the opinion that you're either a medium or you're not. And a number of my colleagues, differ with me on that, and that's fine. And because I've seen development classes where people are just in tears because they can't get anything, and the fact is they don't have any advanced ability in that, and that's not a cut down, and that is not an insult. We're all good at different things. Some people are incredible auto mechanics. Some people are fantastic artists or musicians or chefs, or some people are just really good parents. Okay? There's many different skills that people have. So just because you can't tune into the other side, don't think that you're any less than somebody who can, or somebody who can, paint the Sistine Chapel or whatever. So I prefer to focus on actually doing what I do and explaining the phenomenon. So even if you're not a medium, but you have a mediumistic experience, like in a dream, or you see something, or you hear a voice that's transmitted to you from the other side, then you can understand that it's not hocus pocus, that it is real, and that you need to accept the message and the healing component of it. Because spirits don't come through and say, go take an axe and kill your neighbor. Okay, that's a mental disorder. Okay, and I know I'm being kind of facetious when I say that, but the thing is, spirits are not here to control us. They are not here to make us do negative things. They're not here to possess us or haunt us. Those are other factors. They are here to guide us, whether or not we're listening to the guidance of spirits, which I believe is an extension of the guidance of God. That's the personal decision that we all make.
That is wonderfully put. I understand that you do a lot of lectures, that this particular, the Mystical Magi, is just one in a series of lectures that you do. Yes. And are you going to be doing more of those in the future in Florida, or what's coming up for you?
Well, a lot of people have been asking me to do that, and so I've got lectures on grief management. I've got lectures on the science of spirit communication, on the scientific basis for reincarnation. One of my favorites is called Rulers, Royals, Psychics, and Spirits, and it's how through history people of power have had psychics and mediums standing in the wings, and that was real fun. And of course, I got the Mystical Magi, and I've got one that I did for a women's conference called Intuition: The Key to Your Success, and that's a 4-step approach to learning to trust your intuition to get the most out of it in a business context. And then I'm working on other presentations, such as the Shroud of Turin, which fascinating.
Exciting.
Yeah, very, very fascinating.
I thought I had read that, and that sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about that.
And then I got
you pick so many subjects that are so interesting and intriguing to many, many people. So, and you have a way of explaining things so beautifully, Mark, really, that everyone can understand and relate to. Thank you so much for being you. I appreciate that. And a big shout-out to Rocky, your manager. She's been wonderful dealing with her and her explanations, and I can't thank you enough for making the trip to Sarasota in another week. It's very exciting. We're all levitating off the seats waiting for you. And what else did I want to ask you? You know, I wanted to say to you how beautifully you put your messages. Your evidence is outstanding. You have raised the bar, I would say, for most mediums in the world. We all strive to be evidential, but you have a special something, Mark, that is just not just touching, but and humorous and human. But it's such a beautiful connection that you have. God bless you. You really do have a spectacular, amazing ability, and I just love it. I can't wait to meet you.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to meeting you as well, and everybody that's listening, if you'd like to visit my website, evidenceofeternity.com, you can find out about the events at the Sarasota Center of Light, the Mystical Magi, on Friday, December 13th, and then an evening of spirit communication on Saturday, December 14th. And please, I invite you to sign up for my newsletter so you'll know what's going on with me and where I'm going to be around the country and when I'm coming back to Sarasota, too.
Oh, that'll be great. Thank you so much, Mark, for spending time with us. Our listeners are just chatting away. They're so excited to have listened to you, and I know they'll be checking out your website. And don't forget to buy those books because they really are incredible. What a great, they're just read like thrillers, you know. It's just fabulous, Mark. Thank you so much. So I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. I can't wait. And to all the listeners, God bless you, and have a happy holiday season. And I have to, have a merry Ramahana Badi Kwanzmas.
Thank you so much, Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to tune in next week. We have a psychic Joanne Leo. She is fabulous, psychicjoanneleo.com. Joanne with 2 N's and Leo like a lion. She takes your birth date and your birth name, and that's your ticket to heaven. And she can do some psychic numerology for you next week. We'll be taking callers. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Good night, all.
Don't want the fun to end? Grab more refreshments, then head over to Goldilocks Productions' YouTube channel.
With over 950 archive shows, the fun doesn't have to end.